Hey, man.
Hey, how's it going?
No Pat today, huh?
No, he's off saving the world, ones and zeros at a time, going out there and fighting off the bad guys, I think.
Well, that's good. Are you sure he's not at McDonald's?
He might be. He might be. You know what's fantastic about McDonald's? What I remember when I was a kid?
What's
Do
that?
you remember that Monopoly game?
Yeah,
Everybody
right.
remembers that.
Yep.
I actually think there was an HBO special on it, if you ever look back, where the FBI got involved.
Yeah. The Monopoly game has its shadiness value.
But you know it was neat. So you always could get like a free small fry.
Of course.
Or a shake.
Yeah.
Right? Or, I don't know. I mean...
I guess people won money, right?
Yeah. You know what they were giving away in the latest email I heard?
What's that?
The password to the database in the back end.
Oh, no. And welcome to Security This Week. I'm Carl Franklin. That's my friend Dwayne LaFlotte. Hey, Dwayne.
Hey, how's it going, Carl?
So you were telling me about McDonald's. What happened?
Oh, it's crazy. So, McDonald's sends out this huge mail blast to all the people who quote unquote won, and we know how this is, right? You register an email to win their, to be on their list to send an email. Maybe you win that convertible or $1 million, but
Okay.
9 times out of 10. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fries or a small drink or
Yeah,
something.
it's like fries or a free shake or whatever. So they send you out your quote-unquote winnings.
Mm.
And our buddy Troy Hunt, who put together the Have I Been Pwned site, just happened to receive one of these emails.
Right.
And
Okay.
And in the top of the email was the actual full connection string to the database
Wow.
on the back end.
So how? I mean, there's a theme that runs through Security This Week, which is if people would just pay close attention to what they're doing, a lot of these hacks wouldn't be happening, right?
It's funny. Like, you and I are both developers, and we've been doing this a really, 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 really long time.
Really?
And I really long. And I try and think to myself, okay, I'm the developer. I put myself in those shoes. Right. What happened? Right. We're doing a mail merge, maybe. Okay, maybe not. Maybe we're pulling data out of the database to create these emails to send them. I don't even know how I would put the connection string in every email.
I have a theory.
Okay,
you know
go
how
ahead.
sometimes as programmers, we leave comments, in our code with maybe
Yes.
keys or passwords or something that we need in order to run it locally as a demo. It could be that somebody was doing a mail merge, which you mentioned, which is when essentially it's an old technology, right? You write a letter with Word or something like that, and then you put in details from a mailing list, like first name, last name, yada, yada. And maybe they put at SQL connection string at the top to remind them what that connection string was. So I don't know. I'm going nowhere here, but
it's entirely possible. Or maybe they took that connection string and they wanted to paste it into their tool to do the merge, and they just temporarily put it in the template.
Or maybe it was in the clipboard,
keep it here.
And they thought, I'll paste whatever's in the clipboard, which I was thinking was, my email address or something.
Or maybe they thought there was really a person named data source equals UK dev.
Little Bobby Tables.
Little Bobby Tables.
All right, we're going to have to link to the XKCD
Yes.
Little Bobby Tables now.
Yes, we will.
All right, suffice it to say that this went out and it was based on human dumbness. And, you can probably expect more of the same in the future of these kinds of dumb things. But I guess what it means for the listeners is if you have a process by which, things like this go out, anytime something from data goes out by email, somebody should be doing a test email first.
That is a great idea.
And it should be run by the security department, the IT department, just to make sure there's nothing silly in there.
Right. Nothing you wouldn't want everybody seeing, like, the password and connection string to your database.
Yeah. Well, if I had to pick a theme for today, based on the things we're going to talk about, it might be, reconciliation or making good out of bad, because last week's show was Microsoft not having a good week, right?
Yes. And not only Microsoft. We can't just pick on Microsoft.
No, but 3 out of 5 of stories were about them. But yeah, so, and we can't just pick on Microsoft, but yeah, they did not have a good week last week. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that some of these stories are about trying to fix those things.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And so what do you think the theme's going to be?
I don't know. Maybe the biggest targets tend to have the most vulnerabilities.
I like it.
That's a good one, maybe.
Yep.
All right. Anyway, let's start with what these targets are. There's a blog post here that I got as a press release from Atlas VPN. They make a virtual private network tool. And it's a pretty good article. It says Google and Microsoft accumulated the most vulnerabilities in H1 2021. I guess that means the first half of 2021. And they put out a graph that says the top 10 companies with the most accumulated vulnerabilities. Google is number 1 at 547. Microsoft comes in second at 432. Then Oracle with 316, Cisco with 200, SAP with 118, and the rest are 70 and below. IBM, Jenkins, Apple, Linux, and Aruba, which I didn't even know. I thought Aruba was a place that you go on vacation in the summer.
Apparently, it's also exploitable.
Yeah,
56 times this year, somehow.
Yeah. So it just goes to show you, man, if you look at that, like the top guys are the most popular brands in IT, don't you think?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And you know what's interesting is, like, for example, Google with 547, people might think, oh, maybe we shouldn't use Google stuff. Or Microsoft with 432, maybe we shouldn't use Microsoft. And if you don't use Google or Microsoft, I'm not entirely sure who you are using.
Right, yeah.
And Google and Microsoft both have world-class security teams.
Right.
Some of the best in the industry. Actually, I'd say the best in the industry work for either Google or Microsoft.
Yep.
So it's not for lack of trying, right? So this comes with the moral of, even though you see, these guys are putting hundreds of millions of dollars into security, it's a hard thing to do.
It's a hard thing to
secure software.
And
right?
you should be sufficiently frightened if you're, you're listening to this show, and that means that you're conscious of the security issues.
It's funny, it's funny you say that. A small tangent. I actually had a couple buddies over last night, and we were playing some board games and just chatting. And one of them was getting into security, and and was talking to me. And he's like, what's funny is I started reading security, and now I feel like nothing can be secured.
Yeah.
Before I felt really good, and now that I've been reading security books, it seems like everything is broken and nothing can be secured.
Yeah, and the lesson is don't get popular.
Right. Hold nothing important and don't get popular.
Yeah.
That's the moral of our story here today.
Okay, I'm liking that for a theme. Don't get popular.
Shoot. So it's interesting though, because from our side, right, that's all we see is we see attack after attack after attack, successfully leaking data, and
right.
If you put billions of dollars into security, you still get hacked. So it's a tough market. It's a tough thing to do, to secure something.
Sure. All right. So let's get on to Microsoft's redemption this week. What did they do?
So Patch Tuesday. All of us IT guys either loathe or love Patch Tuesday.
And for anyone who doesn't know, have you ever noticed that on Wednesday morning your computer has completely rebooted itself? It's because it was
good
patched
reason
on Tuesday. Yeah.
Well, it's funny because so we're back in the day, which I believe was a Wednesday, but back in the day, a long time ago, when patches came out, we as IT guys decided whether we applied them or not, right? We said, listen, this is a production system, whatever. I'll wait a couple of months. I'll see if there's any big crashes that happen with this patch.
Yeah.
And then if it looks solid, I'll go test it in a lab, see if it works well for me, and then I'll apply the patch. That whole process is out the window now.
Right.
Like, you should patch patch often and frequently patch as much as you possibly can every piece of software. So Patch Tuesday, Microsoft releases patches. In this last patch, how many vulnerabilities do you think Microsoft fixed? This one patch last Tuesday.
So the patches come out weekly?
Mm-hmm. It depends, really. Like sometimes there's not really much to patch, but at least once a month you'll see a patch.
Gee, I don't know.
If it's maybe important,
20?
They'll come out with multiple.
Maybe 20?
No, higher than that.
30?
Higher than that.
100?
Not that high. It hasn't been that bad a month.
Somewhere between 30 and 100. I don't know. 60.
Yes. Yeah, a little higher.
You're almost
70? There. We could do this as a binary search.
That's true. I think I am doing a binary search.
I think you are. So 86.
Whoa.
86 total vulnerabilities were patched this past Tuesday.
Wow.
2 of which were 0 days.
Wow.
So we've talked about 0 days, I believe, on this show in the past. So a 0 day, well, this is a philosophical question, Carl.
Okay.
0 day is something that's not patched.
Right. So how could they patch a 0 day? They found it?
So if you patch a 0 day, is it still a 0 day? I think it's maybe a 1 day.
1 day. A 0 day plus 1.
So in the patch notes, you can say you're patching a 0 day, but after that, never call it a 0 day again, apparently.
I guess. Hey, just out of curiosity, I'm going to the bleepingcomputer.com story about Patch Tuesday, and they say it fixed 60 flaws. Where did you get your 86 number?
If you scroll down, 60 flaws, 60 vulnerabilities, including a total of 86 vulnerabilities, including Microsoft Edge. So some of the flaws were exploited in multiple ways. So even though the fix may have been like a root cause,
I get it. There
were multiple ways to kind of exploit that.
So there were actually 26 vulnerabilities in Microsoft Edge, which, by the way, we really like as a browser. It's pretty. Oh,
Edge is fantastic.
Pretty fantastic.
Yeah. 20. So to rattle off some of the things fixed, 27 elevation of privilege vulnerabilities.
Wow.
Or what we in the industry lovingly call Privesk vulnerabilities.
Okay.
So these are vulnerabilities to go from a low user that has no rights to super user administrative user in some way on a network. 2 security feature bypasses, where you can either bypass something like ASLR or DEP. I don't want to throw out a lot of terminology, but like bypassing security, software code that's put in there to make sure that malicious things don't happen.
Wow.
16 remote code execution vulnerabilities, or RCEs. So this is where we talked about this last week. I can send you a Word doc or a rich text document, and you open it up and it looks all great and forces code to run on your computer.
Wow.
That was the big MSHTML remote code execution vulnerability that was released last week before, but we had talked about it last week on the show.
Right. Now, Microsoft doesn't get off the hook completely this week. They had a couple more vulnerabilities using Microsoft were discovered. Let's talk about new malware using Windows subsystem for Linux for stealthy attacks. What's that all about?
So I like this one. It's interesting. So my team is always looking for different ways that we can exploit customers and systems and that sort of stuff. And we started taking a look at WSL. So for those of you who haven't played, Carl, have you had a chance to play around with WSL yet?
I don't even know what that stands for. What is it?
Okay, so WSL is the Windows subsystem for Linux.
So, are you talking about the bash shell that I use to
that's the one
to do Azure stuff with?
Yes, exactly that.
Okay, yeah.
So what's neat is Microsoft's really embraced, the appropriate technology or what's the sort of the better technology to adopt in the operating system. So, it doesn't always have to be PowerShell. It doesn't always have to be Python. It doesn't always have to be whatever is best.
Right.
So Microsoft's kind of adopted Bash in Linux, and there's a full Bash shell. Just like there is in Linux, there's one in Windows.
Right.
And the Bash shell allows you to run Linuxy style applications called ELFs.
Okay. See, I don't know any of the lingo. I don't know any of the lingo. I just know that every once in a while I have to use Bash because the examples that are given of how to automate stuff in the cloud are done with Linux.
Yes. Yeah, and a lot of times with Linux, a lot of those systems are written in Linux just because they're designed to be headless,
right,
easy to manage service systems, which is great that Microsoft is really now kind of embracing and supporting.
And by headless, you mean no browser required, no UI, no program. Yeah. You just want to open a command window for those people who don't know what Bash is. It's like the PowerShell equivalent in the Linux subsystem. And PowerShell is sort of just another more powerful command line parser that gives you access to things that if you are authenticated, you can do quite sophisticated things in the cloud and other ways, other places.
So it's a great flexibility as a systems engineer or a developer to be able to say, you know what, I'm comfortable in Bash, I'm going to write this in Bash, or I'm comfortable in PowerShell, I'm going to write this in PowerShell. So all of that flexibility, with flexibility, usually comes security concerns.
Right.
And, there have been recorded now exploits being written as ELF files, which is the native. So in Windows, you have an executable, exe, which is a portable executable file, or P executable.
Right.
In Linux, you have an ELF file, and it's the same thing. It's just an executable file in Linux.
Okay.
So now there are ELF files, which are malicious, which are just normal executables, but are being written as malicious code that run for Windows, which is new, right? That's weird.
It is weird.
Because before you'd write an exe for Windows to exploit Windows, and you'd write an ELF to exploit Linux, and now you're writing ELFs to exploit Windows, which is interesting.
Just more ways that you can shoot yourself in the foot.
Right, exactly. Now, what's also interesting about this, Carl, have you ever heard of VirusTotal?
VirusTotal?
VirusTotal.
No, I have not. What is VirusTotal?
So VirusTotal is an interesting site. Let's say you had an executable that somebody sent you, whether it's an ELF or an exe, or you had a Word doc somebody sent you or whatever, and you weren't sure whether it had a virus in it.
Wow.
You wanted to see, does it have a virus in it? Now, we always say that Windows Defender is fantastic, and it is. It's amazing. Windows Defender is a very, very good antivirus endpoint detection application.
But it doesn't catch everything.
Let's say you want to double check. No, it doesn't, right? It would be hard to catch everything, right? You really want something to run through. What if I could run that executable through every antivirus, or say 20 or 30 of them, or 60 of them?
Right.
That'd be even better.
Yep.
That's what VirusTotal does. So you can go to VirusTotal, you can upload your file, you can submit it, and you can see, hey, how many of these antivirus programs have picked this up as a virus?
Right.
It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Virus developers go there too, because they want to submit their executable or ELF file there to see, hey, if I invest all this time in developing this virus and then I send it out in the wild, is it going to get caught?
Yeah.
Because if it does, I'm just wasting my time.
Sure.
I need to kind of swizzle this executable as a technical term.
I like that. Swizzle. That's very Robert Petrie of you.
Thank you. To get it so that antivirus doesn't know what it is, doesn't think it's malicious. Now, all of us who write, malware and viruses to exploit companies almost never use VirusTotal. The reason is if I submit it to VirusTotal, then everybody sees if it's detected as a virus, and then they can take that signature and they can put it in antivirus, which is what Microsoft does, which is what Symantec does. They all are watching VirusTotal to see when somebody submits things.
Sure.
Right. So it's not a great place to submit your testing when you're testing a virus.
Well, if you plan to use it, for nefarious purposes.
Maliciously, yes. In a malicious sense, yes. But just recently, VirusTotal has started to show ELF files, so Linux executables that were designed to exploit Windows.
Wow.
And most of them right now, when they exploit, they pull down all of this malicious code. When they go to reach out and do that, they're looking at local IPs. So they're saying, hey, my malicious code is located on 192.168.0.5. And the reason they think that's happening right now is because they've caught it just as malicious actors are actually creating this as a new pipeline.
Wow.
So something to think about is like, okay, so I think what you're seeing here is the very, very early stages of malicious actors in the field going, okay, how else can I exploit everybody on the internet? And maybe it's using WSL and creating an ELF, a Linux file, to then exploit Windows, which is weird. Antivirus might not know how to handle that.
True.
And they're submitting their samples, their development, early development, to VirusTotal to see what VirusTotal says.
Interesting. I had this experience where I tried to take a project that I was working on in C#, which is a programming language, and zip it up. And then try to Gmail that to somebody who wants to look at it and play around with it. And Gmail says, there's code in this zip file. I'm not going to allow you to zip it up. So I used to be able to rename the zip file to .bin.
Yes.
And that worked for a while, but now they're actually looking in the file that you're uploading and looking to see if it has code.
Yes.
How cool is that?
That is wiki cool. Do you want to know how to bypass it?
Sure.
So
you use GitHub.
GitHub, honestly, you joke, but GitHub is fantastic for deploying malware.
Oh, for deploying malware. Well, it's great to use.
Well, I can host stuff up there, right? And just pull code down. And then I can use like a CSC compiler and compile stuff on the fly. So there's all sorts of cool things you could do to.
Now, I know that I can hear GitHub. Eyes rolling back in their head from people who don't care what GitHub is, but GitHub is a repository. And what does that mean? It's a place where you can create projects of code and then either make them public so other people can use them, or make them private and invite people to use them. And what it means is it's a source control thing. So if I'm on my computer at home, I create a repository in GitHub, which is just a collection of files. And then I go to another place and another desktop or laptop. I can open that up and clone that project, and I've got all the source code right there. So I think what Dwayne's saying is, you could create this public, hey, here's a little program you can run on Windows to give you 60% off of everything you buy at Amazon.com. Just run this and let it sit in the background. And then some people go, hey, that's pretty cool. And even though the code is all right there, they probably aren't going to check it, and they might even run it, and Bob's your uncle.
Yeah, like all those people out there that are downloading Bitcoin miners.
Yeah, but GitHub does have some really good security things in place to look for malicious code in code that gets uploaded.
Yeah, they do. Honestly, there's a lot of really good things in GitHub as a content creator. There's also a lot of really good plugins for looking for if I incorporate other GitHub repositories into my project, where they'll go and security check those. There's actually a lot of really good stuff up there. If you're not trying to be malicious,
right? But you were going to tell me how to bypass the Google Gmail file attachment check.
Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
So if I were to attach a zip file, if you were to take a zip file, or even a Word document, which is weird because Word documents literally are zip files. Take a Word document sometime, rename it to .zip, and then right-click on it and extract it.
That's funny.
And what's really weird is you will actually see all of the raw information on the inside of the Word document. You'll see an XML file defining the schema. You'll see all sorts of stuff because it's just a zip format. Wow. But if you were to take any file that's a zip and open the header of the file, so literally look at byte by byte what's in the top of the file.
So you mean put it in a text editor or something where you can actually read the binary code?
Yeah, open a zip file in Notepad sometime or in Notepad++. And what you'll see is it usually starts with PK.
Yep.
The two letters PK.
Phil Katz, right? So, and there's the guy who invented ARC, which became Zip, right? Yes. Are you that old?
That is impressive.
ARC?
That is impressive. It used to be called PK Zip.
Well, it used to be called PK Zip, but before that, he had one called ARC, which was a command line tool to make ARC files, which was before zip files.
Carl, I'm impressed.
Thank you. I'm old. I'm going back to my DOS days now.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway,
not OS2 warp, but
so if it says PK.
So Google goes in and says, "So okay, I realize that this is actually a zip file. They just renamed it. Now I'm going to look for the manifest. Right. So I'm going to go look through all the files that exist in here. And if you didn't password protect the zip, even if you password protected the zip, they can still see the manifest, and they'll see the .cs files, and they'll see the .sln files, whatever, and they'll go, yeah, this is code. I don't want to allow that to happen. But if you were to take your project, zip it up, take that zip it up, and put a password on that second zip, the only thing they would see
is another zip
file. Is the manifest, which is a zip file, which they can't open.
That is brilliant. Do you have to password protect the second zip file?
You do. You don't even have to password protect the second zip file.
Really? Yeah,
because they can't get to the contents anyways, because you've already password protected the outer shell.
Wow.
So all they can see is the manifest. And honestly, it is one of the ways that people deploy malware. So if you ever receive an email that's like, hey, here's your invoice, and it's in a zip, and in there is a zip which you need to extract, this is the reason they're doing that.
Wow, don't ever get a zip within a zip. Well, you should never even open a zip that you get by email from somebody you don't know. But we don't need to go over that again, children, do we?
No. No, we don't. We've already said if you ever receive anything in email, never click on it.
Right. Even if it's from your mom. But I guess, if you're talking to your mom, you're having a conversation, and then there's a reply, which includes all the other things from your mom, and your mom says, this is the file I was telling you about. Now at least you know it's from a reputable source, but it could still be laden with malware.
It could be.
So you want to save that to a separate place. And this is a good time to ask this question, Dwayne. Let's say I saved an attachment from somebody, and I upload it to VirusTotal, and VirusTotal says it's okay. Then I'm still not convinced. But can I open that in a place where it isn't going to affect my machine?
You could.
Is there a sandbox?
Depending on how paranoid you are.
Let's say I'm really paranoid.
I do, you're super paranoid. So you're like me and Patrick. So what I do is I typically will have a virtual machine, a VM, whether that's
the answer.
You can download VMware Player or whatever, but be careful when you set up this VM, it's like a raw Windows system, whatever. In the top, you can actually say, I don't want to allow networking on this VM.
Okay.
So I can disable the network. So I copy the file over, disable the network on it, and I double click on the file and see what it is. And if it starts to do really crazy stuff, no harm, no foul, just power off the VM, revert it back to what nice and clean, and it's gone.
That's a good idea. And you can still copy and paste through the clipboard. So you can copy the file, go to a directory in the VM, paste it in there, and now you can so it's got to be a local VM. Obviously, if you're using a cloud VM like in Azure or AWS, Amazon, you're connected to the internet just to be able to use it. So probably not a good idea. So a local VM, and I don't know, maybe we can get a link to, how to create a VM in Windows. We'll do that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that's how we look at anytime someone wants us to look at code or whatever, we'll throw it up in a totally disconnected VM first just to check it out before we run it on a main system.
Okay. So last week we talked about Windows MS HTML and that exploited bug, but now things have gotten a little more advanced, have they not?
Yes. So it was discussed that, hey, there's this exploit, this MS HTML exploit, which for those of you who didn't catch last week's podcast, shame on you.
Yes.
And the way this works is I can send you an Office document. That might even be just a rich text document. It doesn't have to be a full Word document. And in that, I can include an ActiveX control that in there then can call a URL that then can run code on the behalf of the internal web browser that's in that ActiveX control, which is the MS HTML.
Great googly moogly.
Quick, dirty version of it.
Okay.
So it was more of a research project-y thing that got announced, and as soon as it was publicly announced, there were massive amounts of threat actors.
Wow.
Like the Wizard Spider threat actor, also known as UNC 1878.
Also known as
tracked by
my
Mandiant.
Uncle Joe in prison.
Wizard Spider.
That's they call him in prison.
I want to know who names these people, honestly. The Wizard Spider's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Like, as a security guy, I want to be like, you know what? I want people to call me the Wizard Spider.
Or the Spider Wizard. Even better.
So there were a lot of these threat actors that now started using this attack as part of their attack chain to deploy, malware, Cobalt Strike beacons, all sorts of not very good things to have on your computer.
Right.
But it's nice. What's lucky? If you patched on Patch Tuesday, CVE 2021-40444, which is this MS-HTML bug, should be patched.
Very good. It should be, because they had 86 freaking patches on Tuesday.
Right. They should have patched everything at that point. Now, it's all secure now, Carl. We're going to have to end the podcast.
Right. This would be last Tuesday we're talking about, which would be September 14th, because we're recording this on the 16th, but it'll be released on the 21st. So just getting our dates straight. Time shifting is fun.
Right. So it's interesting that right after the public announcement of that MS-HTML issue, they saw hundreds fold of threat actors actually testing it out.
Wow.
Because it's such a simple exploit to do. So it's impressive.
Wow.
Impressive to watch.
All right.
But not only Microsoft, right? Microsoft's not the only place you need to patch.
That's true. Are you speaking of the Apple?
Apple. Yeah, the other guys.
Entry 0-day bug?
Yes. So I think it's over the last probably 3 or 4 podcasts now, we've mentioned this Israeli company called the NSO Group.
Right.
That created a piece of spyware that sits on your iPhone that watches all sorts of things.
Right.
Now, that spyware is typically targeting activists, journalists, that sort of stuff. And that company, I think, and I think the company's come under fire for who they sell this package to.
Right. But we don't want to get political here or have any.
We do not
have any governments come after us. We're just reporting the news. We didn't make it.
Exactly. So you probably have heard of the Pegasus exploit. What's interesting with forced entry, it's a part of that Pegasus package.
Okay.
But it is a 0-click, 0-day.
That's right. I remember this. We talked about this because you didn't even have to open a message. It was a way that a malicious actor could send a message to an iPhone, and I think it is through the messaging. Yeah.
Yes.
And you're screwed. If somebody sends it to you, you're done.
Right. Right. Exactly. So, and it's interesting. So to break that down even further, what they sent you was a GIF file. So it's a picture.
Now, is it GIF or GIF?
Listen, I'm a big GIF fan. And maybe it's just because Jiffy was a fantastic peanut butter and it makes me feel warm and fuzzy.
I think you're thinking of Jiffy Pop, which is popcorn, but the peanut butter is Jif, J-I-F. Shall I correct you yet again, Dwayne?
I look forward to it every week.
All right, so here's what I know about. So GIF stands for Graphics Interchange Format. And some guy came up with this, just like Phil Katz came up with zip, right? Came up with this algorithm to create these files. And the purists say it's GIF because graphics is G. So why would you say J? However, I remember reading this. The guy who invented it calls it GIF.
Well, see, that's why I do it.
That doesn't mean he's smarter than you or the people who say GIF. I tend to think GIF is more accurate, but if the guy who wrote it says GIF, I'm not going to argue with anybody. All right, so
that being said, so
it sends you a GIF file.
They send you this small GIF file. Right. And the GIF file is really actually an Adobe PSD file, not a GIF. So they just renamed it. So
wait a minute.
You get this iMessage file.
Our astute listenership right now how to shut down somebody's iPhone by sending? Will this work for me if I do this?
It has 748 bytes in the header. That will, yeah. So what this will do? No, it's a very special 748 byte header in that file. Okay. So it looks like an Adobe format.
Okay.
But when the IM transcoder agent, so your iMessage agent encoder that tries to read that file and understand what it is, when it tries to read it, it's malformed and it crashes.
Wow.
When it crashes, the agent crashes and starts back up. And unfortunately, when it starts back up, you can tell it to run whatever code you want. And that's the sort of the crux of this bug is they can send you this message. And while your iPhone is in the background trying to transcode or understand that attachment, it crashes, runs the code they want, and restarts, and you don't see it. That's the whole 0-click part, which is nice.
All right. So the redemption part of the story is that Apple has patched it.
Mm-hmm. So if you're listening to this podcast and you have not patched your iPhone as of September 16th, or your Macintosh or your, Apple iBook Pro, I'm not an Apple guy, but if you haven't patched whatever Apple devices you have at this point, September 16th, 2021, go out there and patch them right now.
Yeah, and especially if you're on some government shit list.
You absolutely want to patch them. Carl and I are probably on government shit lists.
Probably. No, I think you and Dwayne
just
are.
Small government.
I think I've flown under the radar, but you and Patrick rather. Yeah.
Did I tell you the story about maybe for another time about a country that I'm literally on their hate list? But.
No, and I think we should not probably talk about that country on the air.
Let's not
do
mention
that.
them.
All right, so Apple patched the forced entry thing. The last story we have here, we're going back to Microsoft, but it's not really a vulnerability. It's something that they've decided to do. They want to encourage their users of all their Microsoft properties and all their accounts to use a passwordless login. I don't even know what that means. How do you log in without a password?
I love this. This is awesome. Because I can see a couple of security guys sitting around and going, hey, you know what the problem with security is? It's passwords. We should get rid of them. And another guy going, that's a fantastic idea. Let's do it. Let's get rid of passwords.
Let's get rid of passwords.
Oh, we've just solved the whole problem.
That's right. If there's no passwords, there's no security. If there's no security, there's no security vulnerabilities.
We've done a great job. Way to solve the world's problems.
All right, so let's be serious. What are they thinking?
So actually, this is very cool. So I agree that the problem with passwords, and I think we've talked about this. The problem with passwords, though, is a lot of people reuse them.
Yes,
Carl and I don't.
No,
but other people do reuse passwords, which is bad because if your password gets breached on a different site, somebody's going to use that password against everything else.
That's right.
You sign up at some small hardware company's site and use the password you use in your office with the email you have at your office, then we're going to try and breach your office. So passwords get reused. Passwords follow patterns. So if my password right now is summer 2021, I can tell you what my password will be in the fall and in the winter. Lots of times they use kids or birth dates, that sort of stuff. So there's a lot of predictable things that we do to discover what a user's password is. So that's a problem with passwords. In here, they're saying, hey, you know what? There are other ways for us to authenticate people. We don't have to use your password. So have you used the Microsoft Authentication app, the Authenticator?
I have, and I love it. And I love those apps in general that basically when I log in somewhere, something comes up on my phone and say, hey, is this you? And I say yes. And, sometimes there will be like 3 numbers on the screen. And they will send you one of those numbers and ask you to click on the screen on the number that they just sent you or something like that.
Honestly, I think it's awesome because there are plenty of times where I'm sitting like even little things, silly things. I'm going to log into my Xbox again.
Yeah.
And then I'm sitting there typing in a 48-character password while everybody's watching my TV screen going, okay, well, that's his password. Wow.
Right.
So it's really kind of cool that now you can just say, hey, you know what? This is my email address. I'm trying to log into a Microsoft service. And it'll authenticate to your phone. And it's not just that Authenticator app. They support all sorts of algorithms, right? There's the Authenticator app. There's they can text you, they can email you to a secure email that you have. So there's all sorts of different methods that they're supporting, but they really are putting a good foot forward to trying to get rid of passwords. Literally, this is the first time I've ever seen, Carl, where you can go into your Microsoft account today, as of yesterday, I think, and remove your password.
Wow.
This isn't a well, you can have your password there and you can still use your password to get on, but you could use this other cool feature, this other cool password listing. No, you literally could go in and remove your password. There's no password to your Microsoft account at all.
See, I heard that your password is still there as a last resort.
You can leave it if you want, but you do have the ability to remove it if you want and just say, no, I don't want to do a password at all. There's no way for somebody to go to Microsoft's site, type in my username and my password because there's no password for me to type in.
Okay, so that means that if your phone breaks, you're kind of screwed.
You're in troubled waters.
I have two stories this week about that. I went down to visit a friend of mine down in New London that runs a theater, and she told me that her Sprint phone died, and she wants to send it back, but wants to clean it, set it to the factory reset first. Like, how can I do that? Move. Well, the problem is it won't charge. And you can't reset it to the factory if it won't charge. It won't charge. It won't boot. It's dead. And so she has this dilemma, right? Do I send it back to Sprint in this, because they can revive it or whatever and take all my stuff, you know, it would probably be some tech person who has a friend, you know, who wants to steal your identity or whatever. But that's kind of a moral dilemma, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. You know what I reset phones like that with?
What, a hammer?
Usually a hammer. Sometimes my car, I'll back over it, but it's usually a hammer.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sending it back because it broke. What's this nail through it? How did that happen? Oh, I must have run over.
It's really weird.
I'm a freak accident. Nail fell out of the sky from 1,000 feet and penetrated it. Yeah, I don't know.
Never seen that before. Actually, I think that's under the Act of God clause.
Yeah. And the second story is somebody sent me this week a text message that says, hey, it looks like you've been hacked on Facebook, and sent me a picture of an invitation from apparently me asking to, a friend request. And so I immediately changed my Facebook password, but shortly after I realized nobody had hacked my password. Nobody had hacked into my account. What they did was they created a new account using pictures from my account and looked at all my friends and sent all my friends a new friend request and basically said, hey, I have a new Facebook account, yada, yada, which is I'm not going to say it's legal, but I mean, it's allowed technically under what Facebook does. But I went looking for some advice on Facebook.com of what to do if somebody's impersonating you. So I'm going to add a link to that, or you can just, Google Bing impersonation of a Facebook page, Facebook profile, or Instagram account. And it basically tells you what you do. You go to their page, you select find support or report page, select scams and fake pages, select pretending to be another person, and send. So that's essentially what you do.
So you don't leave them a message on the page saying I have a certain set of skills.
I would not do that. Well, if I were you, maybe I would say, hey, do you know who you're messing with, dude?
You don't track them down digitally. That's not what you do.
You're in a world of hurt, son.
I'm going to have to change my tactics. I didn't know there was a page just to submit it. That's pretty awesome.
All right. Well, that's the Redemption Show, I think.
Yes, I like it.
Yeah, it's a good week for redemption. And Dwayne, I guess I'll see you and Patrick next week.
Yes, sir. Glad to talk. Looking forward to it.
All right. We'll see you then, too. Bye-bye. Hey, thanks for listening. You can find us on Twitter at SecurityThisWK and on Instagram at SecurityThisWeek. And we're also working on a Facebook page and a Patreon page. But of course, you can find all of these episodes wherever you get podcasts and at SecurityThisWeek.com.